Thomas, you have asserted in your Summa Theologica that law is nothing else than an ordinance of reason for the common good, made by him who has care of the community. How would you reconcile this with the existential contention that existence precedes essence, and hence, morality is a human construction contingent upon the freedom of the individual?
Monsieur Sartre, it appears to me that your contention that existence precedes essence leads to a concept of morality that is substantially different from the classical and Christian understanding I uphold. In my view, the rational creature is subject to divine providence in the most excellent way, insofar as it partakes of a share of providence, by being provident both for itself and for others. Summa Theologica I2, Q. 91, Art. 2. How, then, do you reconcile the absence of a shared moral order with the evident need for societal cohesion and the common good?
Thomas, while I understand your position, I must emphasize the existential autonomy of the individual. As I wrote in Existentialism is a humanism. Man is nothing else but what he makes of himself. The societal cohesion you speak of can surely arise not from a preordained moral order, but from a shared project stemming from our freely chosen commitments. How do you account for the role of freedom in shaping the moral landscape of a society?
Monsieur Sartre, freedom is indeed a central aspect of human life. Yet, as I have noted, free will is the cause of its own movement, because by his free will man moves himself to act. Summa Theologica, Q. 83, Art. 1. However, this freedom does not imply that morality is a mere human construct. It must operate within the bounds of natural law, which is nothing else than the rational creature's participation in the eternal law. Summa Theologica I2, Q. 91, Art. 2. How then, in your view, does absolute freedom of choice lead to a universal morality, rather than a disordered plurality of individual moralities?
Thomas, you invoke natural law, seeing it as a manifestation of eternal law within the rational creature. In contrast, I argue, particularly in Being and Nothingness, that man is condemned to be free, and with this freedom comes the responsibility to define one's own moral values within the context of a situation. If man's essence is indeed the result of his actions and choices, rather than a divine order, how can natural law preside over the multitude of unique, existential circumstances individuals face?
Monsieur Sartre, your notion of man being condemned to be free suggests a burdensome nature of freedom when devoid of a pre-existing essence. However, God does not command impossibilities, but by commanding admonishes thee to do what thou canst, and to pray for what thou canst not, and aids thee that thou mayst be able. Summa Theologica I2, Q. 109, Art. 9. Thus, the law inscribed in our nature is not a constraint, but a guide for exercising our freedom responsibly. How does one avoid despair in your framework, where moral guidance must be constantly created anew in each situation, rather than drawn from a consistent natural order?
Thomas, the despair you mention is indeed a recognition of our profound freedom. As I have noted, when we say that man chooses himself, we do mean that every one of us must choose himself, but by that we also mean that in choosing for himself he chooses for all men. Existentialism is a humanism. Your appeal to a guiding natural order seems to presuppose a universal essence applicable to all human beings. Yet, isn't there a risk that such universalism might suppress the unique and varied experiences of the individual, for whom existential choice is the path to authenticity?
Monsieur Sartre, your concern with authenticity is indeed a significant one. However, as I have indicated, it is natural to man to attain to intellectual truths through sensible things, because all our knowledge originates from sense. Summa Theologica, Q. 84, Art. 6. Universals do not suppress individuality but provide a foundation from which individual experience can be intelligently interpreted. Might not your emphasis on radical individual choice overlook the importance of shared human nature, which is the basis for common understanding and genuine community?
Thomas, while it's true that our knowledge begins with a sensible world, I assert that man is the future of man, underscoring our constant project of self-creation rather than conformity to an essence. From existentialism is a humanism. The shared human nature you reference, does it not risk becoming a homogenizing force, failing to account for the diverse ways in which individuals give meaning to their experiences and choose their own paths? How does Thomistic thought accommodate the existential freedom that allows each individual to transcend fixed essences and create their unique essence through action?
Monsieur Sartre, your emphasis on self-creation resonates with the importance of individual action in life's moral theater. However, as I have stated, grace does not destroy nature but perfects it. Summa Theologicae, Q. 1, Art. 8 AD 2. Human nature provides the structure within which freedom and grace operate. Rather than homogenizing, this nature offers the potentialities and capacities through which individual actions gain their significance. How do you ensure that the project of self-creation does not lead to a subjective relativism, which could undermine the very notion of moral responsibility?
Thomas, your concern with subjective relativism is indeed pertinent. Yet recall that I maintained, we can judge the heart of a man by his actions. From existentialism is a humanism. The existential project of self-creation is not an abandonment of responsibility, but rather its affirmation. We are responsible not just for ourselves, but for all humanity and our choices. In this view, moral responsibility stems from the recognition and acceptance of our freedom and its implications. How, then, can we reconcile the fixed nature of human potentialities with the constant flux and subjectivity inherent in the lived human experience?
Monsieur Sartre, you rightly emphasize the responsibility that accompanies human action. In line with your thought, I too acknowledge that man must act, for it is necessary for the perfection of the human community that there should be men who devote their lives to contemplation. Summa Theologica 2:2, Q. 180, Art. 4. However, the potentialities and essences I speak of are not static constraints. They are the starting points for growth and development within which genuine freedom is exercised and directed towards the good. How might existential freedom safeguard itself from devolving into arbitrariness, if not anchored by objective standards provided by our shared human nature?